MXW evolved from my love for professional wrestling. I started watching wrestling around 10, I'd say, during the Attitude Era. And my parents weren't really very big into it, and they actually kept me away from it for a long time. I used to have to watch wrestling kind of in secret. They didn't allow me to stay up and watch Monday Night Raw or Nitro or anything like that, so I had to. Back in those days, you had a VCR, so I would tape Monday Night Raw, and I would watch it before going to school the next day because all my friends talked about it. Those were exciting times because it seemed like everybody was into wrestling, either WCW or WWF, and it was really awesome. So from my interest in professional wrestling, of course, you're watching Monday Night Raw and you're seeing Stone Cold, The Rock, The Undertaker, Mankind, all these guys. So it's inevitable that eventually you're going to get into the action figures. And I was always big into action figures anyway, with Spider-Man, Batman, Power Rangers, all those things. So I ended up talking my mom into buying me my first wrestling figures, which back then was the bone crunching action, the BCA action figures. And I remember my first ones. It was a 2-pack. It was Goldust and Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Triple H. Very first action figures there. I used to play with those for hours. I made a makeshift ring which didn't have any ropes or turnbuckles, anything like that, from a soda, one of those cardboard soda crates, and played with those. And I ended up eventually getting Badass Billy Gunn, I think, and The Undertaker, and eventually through getting them, from birthday and Christmas and rare other occasions, stuff like that, I finally built a pretty good roster of these wrestling figures, WWF. And that kind of evolved, and eventually I had some of the Toy Biz WCW figures. I had Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, and I never had a Sting, unfortunately. And times times changed, and eventually there was the Titantron Live, the TTL came out, and those are awesome. I remember having a lot of those, having the stage that came with Vince McMahon, and having Kane, X-Pac, Triple H, Stone Cold, The Rock, the main guys pretty much at that time. But kind of just naturally evolved into having an organization, a Fed, much like WWF or WCW. And I've had many different Feds over the years. Of course, starting out, I had the plain, pretty much WWF, copy, I guess. Had all the main guys, Stone Cold, The Rock, Undertaker, all those guys, fighting it out, and pretty much, kind of following what WWF was doing on TV each week, and do my own thing too, incorporating ideas I had, and teaming people up that I wanted to see team up or align with, and people that I wanted to see be a good guy that may have been a bad guy on TV. And by that time, my parents were okay with the wrestling as far, as me watching and stuff. They kind of saw that it was it was an interest of mine, it was a passion of mine, and kind of let me, do my thing. And wrestling pretty much kind of took over. By the time I was, 13 or so, I was a diehard wrestling fan, especially WWF at the time. But just wrestling in general was a passion of mine. The group of friends that I really hung out with were into wrestling and stuff, and we came up with our own personas, and which were pretty much rip-offs of, most of our group was pro WWF, was, that was the main thing. And we did watch WCW too, but it was mainly WWF. And we had, personas that were pretty much rip-offs. Like, one of my friends was Red Dog, which the name of course was a take on Road Dog, but he didn't really have the same persona so much. But the name, my other friend was like big into Mick Foley and kind of was a lot like Mick Foley, kind of like a, an outcast, kind of a weird guy, wore, sweatpants all the time. So we ended up kind of using that as a base for him, and we called him Mandible. And like myself, I think I had like Rocky J, because I was a big fan of The Rock and stuff at the time, and I think I had a persona that was like, the kind of redneck, badass, whatever, taking from Stone Cold Steve Austin and everything. So, and it was fun. We didn't really do too much. Couldn't ever get any, everyone together. We were still in middle school, so it was really hard to get everyone, over to my house or over. Couldn't go to anybody else's house because their parents were like, oh no, no backyard wrestling. So, I had a couple times, one or two of them would come over. Most of the time it was one at a time, which is really hard to kind of have an organization. Eventually I moved from that town, maybe like 45 minutes up the road, and started at a new school and made a new group of friends. We eventually ended up having backyard wrestling. Like, we were able to, or I was able to get everyone over to my house, and I took it really seriously. I wrote scripts. I pretty much came up with everyone's like persona for the most part, helped with their names and everything like that. And anytime we were going to have shows or have events, we called them events, I would make flyers and hand them out at school and everything like that. I handled the website and all this stuff. Like, I was really, really into it. It was my passion, something I really wanted to do. It was something I really enjoyed doing, so much that I dreamed not only of being a professional wrestler one day. I think I dreamt more about having my own wrestling company. So that was a lot of fun, and eventually it kind of ended once we graduated middle school and, people went off to different high schools and stuff. It was harder to keep in touch and everything like that, and then my life got kind of hectic. And that was kind of the close of my backyard wrestling days, and I really miss it. And I watch guys on YouTube, and it really makes me miss it. I wish I could still do it, even if it was just a hobby, even if it was something just to do on the weekend. Even at my age,